It's time for Roadrunner Classic, a look back at great seasons in CSU Bakersfield history. Presented by Dignity Health, Hello Human Kindness, Stockdale Podiatry Group, We Treat Your Feet, Knights Jewelers. If you don't know jewelry, know your jeweler. Barbich, Hooper, King, Dill, Hoffman, providing peace of mind in an increasingly complex world. And by the Birchtold Equipment Company, Bakersfield's leading equipment company.
The Roadrunners are your 2015 WAC baseball champions, and Bill Kernan, the old playwright, just wrote a fantastic final scene for the Roadrunners. CSUB winning this one 5-4, and baby, we're going to the regionals.
Baby, we're going to the regionals, and we sure did. Welcome again to another edition of Roadrunner Classic. Who was that guy? Man, he was excited. Corey Costello, former voice of the Roadrunners, here with you as we go down memory lane and an opportunity to remember some of the greatest seasons in CSUB Division I history. And last week and again this week, we're talking about the 2015 WAC baseball champions and NCAA regional squad for CSUB baseball. As I mentioned, my name is Corey Costello. I am the former voice of the Roadrunners for baseball, basketball, amongst other things for multiple years, since baseball basically started, and basketball since 2003 all the way to 2017. And, this program was an opportunity as we're in a very, very odd time. We don't have live sports. And so we're trying to figure out ways to bring new programming to the airwaves. And I was approached with this opportunity for this program. So here we are, the second half of the story about the 2015 WAC baseball champion Roadrunners. Coming to you from the Costello Recording Compound in Tehachapi, California. We're sitting around the big Metaphoric bonfire and enjoying life during an unbelievable time, but we're thinking about the good times, and a few good beers and some great stories is really what we're doing. The show is stories, and it's stories about the greatest Division I seasons for CSU Bakersfield Athletics, told from the perspective of the guy who was there every step of the way, along the bus rides, in the hotel rooms, in the team meetings, and the tournaments, and the 3-game series. I mean, I was there broadcasting it every step of the way, and so this is a chance to kind of take a look at that season from my eyes. And we also bring in former head coach Bill Kernan quite a bit as well, who just had a phenomenal final season in 2015. And that's what we talked about, really. We talked a lot with Coach Kernan in the first show, because what we did is we really had to lay the groundwork. And if you listen to the show, we really made it clear that a championship team doesn't just happen. It's not just because you have the most talent on the court or on the field. I've been around plenty of teams, the most talented teams. The most talented teams don't always win. You need to have the right mindset. You need to have the right culture. And so in the last show, we really focused on, with Coach Kernan, we talked a lot about that culture and really where it came from, because even in 2015, it was more than just the 2015 squad winning that championship and going to that regional. There was a lot that was put in before them. And the great news is there's a lot of connection. I mean, you go back to the 2009 team, the first teams, and the 2011 squad that almost made the NCAA regional as an independent. I mean, 33 games and just missed out because of a couple upsets in some conference tournaments that left CSUB on the outside looking in. Really, some of the people on their boards had CSUB as the first team out that year. And this was a 3-year program at the time. And to get that close in 2011 and just to have that sort of taken away was tough. And then in 2013, we mentioned that team and that season. And again, a squad that came within one run. I mean, on a weird sort of fluke type deal where the conference tournament wasn't double elimination. It ended up being a pool play. And, you really had to go unbeaten to win your pool to get into the championship series. And CSUB has a game against UT San Antonio the year the WAC was pretty much all Texas schools, and Bakersfield was an affiliate member. The game got delayed by lightning overnight, and we picked it up the next morning. And one Chuck Buchanan threw one. It wasn't even a bad pitch. He just went to the inner half of the plate from a guy who loved to eat inner half fastballs, and he lined it down the third baseline and win the game 1-0. And they went on to win the WAC that year. So came close again in 2013, and then to finally have it done in 2015. But so much more. And what was the beauty about the program was the fact that those guys from the the '09 squad, which a lot of them were on the 2011 team, they came back and they trained in the off season. Some of those guys were still in minor league baseball at the time, so they'd come back and work in the fall and stuff with some of the current players. So that mentality stuck around. And of course, we talked about the fall of 2015, which really was the fall of 2014, but it was the fall season for the 2015 squad. And really what they did, Coach Kernan pointed it out, they went Navy SEAL style. They trained like SEALs in terms of mentality and victory and competition and punishments for losing. And then they had an okay start to the season. It was so-so, and about middle of the year, they found themselves right around 500. And after losing a series to Utah Valley, they had a series of meetings, and then they turned around from there, ended up winning 16 of 20 games to go into the WAC tournament as the number 2 seed that year. Remember, Grand Canyon won the regular season title. They were a very good ball club that year, very good. But they were ineligible to go to the tournament because they were a transitioning team from Division II to Division I. CSUB went through that, not in baseball because they didn't have a baseball team when they transitioned, but they did in basketball and other sports. I mean, it's just part of the growing process. So they went in as a 2 seed. I think New Mexico State had the seed. Sacramento State had the seed above them at the 2, so at the 1. So CSUB went in as the 2 that year. But they got to Mesa, and Mesa, Arizona, is where the conference tournament is held. The first year that they were in the WAC, the second year they were in the WAC, but the first year they moved it back to Mesa after being in Texas one year. It was at Wrigley West in 2014, the new Cubs facility, because Hohokam Stadium, which was owned by the Cubs and then was bought by the A's, anyway, was being renovated. So back to 2015, we're back at Hohokam Stadium, home of the Athletics, which for me personally, my favorite baseball team. So it was awesome to be at the Oakland A's facility for this tournament. It was kind of fun being a geeky A's fan to be there. But the Roadrunners, as they always had they had a first round bye, so they had a couple days basically, but they had to be there a few days early because there was a conference tournament. So not really a banquet. They did more of an informal sort of reception on a lawn in a seating area, and they announced your all WAC teams, your first and second teams, and your player of the year, and your pitcher of the year, and your coach of the year. Pretty good year for the Roadrunners that year. We talked a little bit about Hayden Carter, and we will talk more about him in the coming hours because he was such an instrumental part of this team, and of course as well the regional or the series in Mesa, and then eventually the regional series. But Hayden Carter had a tremendous season for the Roadrunners. I mean, this was a guy, as I mentioned before, he struggled as a freshman, sophomore, junior. Really wasn't. It took him a long time to develop, but his final numbers as a Roadrunner, his senior season, they're pretty darn impressive. 9-3, 2.44 ERA. He's had 8 complete games and threw 125 innings that season. A tremendous year, 58 strikeouts, only gave up 3 home runs, only walked 24. Great numbers, had a 277 average against, so very solid season. And he was named WAC Pitcher of the Year. And then he claims he was surprised, but I don't know if he was or not. Bill Kernan was named Head Coach of the Year as well that season. As a matter of fact, I was able to go back and somewhere in like this hard drive that I had to buy a cable from Amazon because I don't know where the cable was at from it. I had to hold it like in my hands here at the Costello recording compound just right to get the light to go on so I could actually see what was on this drive. Man, I found this video from Mesa, Arizona, and I'm going to play the audio of Coach Kernan and Hayden Carter after they received their awards. So we're going to take you back to 2015. Back to the lawn at Hohokam Stadium in Mesa, Arizona, and just after Hayden Carter and Bill Kernan won their awards heading into the WAC tournament.
A lot of hard work. It's been a long 4 years, gone through a lot of ups and downs. It's just very gratifying knowing that I put in a lot of hard work the past 4 years. So I couldn't have done it without my teammates. My defense helped me out a lot this year, and I definitely couldn't have done it without them.
First, your reaction to your second Coach of the Year award in 3 seasons?
I was pretty surprised. I think there was some other guys who were maybe more deserving than me. Grand Canyon's going from Division II to Division I, and they win the conference regular season. And I think Carl at Northern Colorado had probably the biggest turnaround. The team that he had last year compared to the one he had this year was really difficult to do in 1 year. I thought that was really outstanding. And then Seattle, of course, wasn't even in the tournament last year, and they get the number 1 seed. So I think there was probably some guys that did more than I did. I think our players played well, and we had the best pitching staff. And so I'm not sure. I'm not sure why I got this award. I'm really not.
For you as a coach, what's it mean more? I mean, you win Coach of the Year, and again for the second time in 3 years, you got a Pitcher of the Year. So as a pitching guy, I mean, which one of those awards feel the best?
Yeah, the pitching is what I'm the proudest of, because that's been my whole career, and started off as a pitcher when I played, and then a pitching coach when I was an assistant, and that's always been my main emphasis as a coach on the field. And so I've always taken pride in my pitching staffs, and so for them to be the staff that that was the best in the conference, and to have the Pitcher of the Year twice in the last 3 years is probably more special to me than my own awards. Yeah.
Your thoughts on Hayden Carter coming from a freshman and now a senior, and the development he's had in 4 years, and to reach this point of being Pitcher of the Year?
Yeah, it's interesting because when he was in high school, he was a winner, and he wasn't a highly touted guy, and he didn't throw very hard, and so we liked him because he competed and he wins, and so there was a development period for him as he went through this, and this was just kind of like his final exams this year, and he passed every one of them.
All right.
That's been one of the fun parts about this show, and I was asked by Greg Kerr recently. He said, "Are you having fun? Are you remembering things?" And as you and Coach Kernan talk, are you remembering things you forgot? And I said, moment by moment. And just now, I mean, I had this video, I pulled this audio file, and I forgot a couple things. It was Coach Kernan's second Coach of the Year award in 3 years. He did win it in 2013, and rightfully so. They were the regular season champions. They beat arguably a tougher WAC. I mean, the WAC was a lot tougher that year just because of the teams that were in it with all the Texas schools. And then they won the regular season championship that year, but missed out on the regional because of that loss we talked about in the WAC tournament. And then he won it again in 2015. Again, I mean, I think at one point he said, "I think my buddies are giving me a going away present," but it was definitely deserved. And then for them to then back it up in the conference tournament. And then he mentioned it in the soundbite. It was Seattle that was the number 1 seed that year, which makes it even more impressive because we're going to learn down the road how many times the Roadrunners had to see Seattle in that conference tournament. So it's been fun on that aspect, and then kind of even going back, look at that. As I saw the video, I mean, you're listening to me, but just to see the faces, I hadn't seen some of those faces. I saw Hayden Carter. I think it was a year or two after CSUB. He was a pitching coach at a graduate assistant volunteer at Cal State Northridge. We played a game down there, and I got to see him and chat with him for a few minutes. And now he's at Palomar College as a pitching coach there. But you see some of those kids in the background, floating around in the back, and it's kind of fun to see some of those people. It's been 5 years. I mean, and that goes by quick. I mean, I'm telling you, that goes by so fast. And kind of a fun, return to memory lane. And that's what this show is. And then, like I said, we remember things. I mean, from segment to segment, minute to minute, things pop in my head, or I see something and you look at it, you go, "Oh, wait, I totally forgot." And there were a lot of key things that popped up like that. But anyway, it was that is the start of the trip to Mesa, where the Roadrunners then go on in the Western Athletic Conference tournament. Interesting thing about Hohokam Stadium before we take a break. Somebody mentioned it to me. Like I said, the year before we didn't play in that stadium. We played at the Cubs' new facility. So they're back at Hohokam. Someone mentioned to me, we did Roadrunner Rundown, the TV show we had at the time. We did it, I think, the following day. We had an off day and we had a practice. So we did the show from the concourse of the ballpark, overlooking the field as our guys took some BP, and Coach Kernan joined us, a few other people. And you as you're looking out with the field in your background, you overlook the Mesa Municipal Cemetery. And somebody mentioned to me, it might have been Coach Kernan, I don't know who it was, but somebody said Waylon Jennings is buried there. And I said, "No way, man. Why would Waylon Jennings, outlaw country? Why would he be buried in Mesa, Arizona? This guy's got to be in Texas somewhere, right? He's got to be in Lukenbach, doesn't he? I mean, he can't be in Mesa, Arizona. I said, no, it's in Mesa. I think I looked it up, and sure enough, he retired to Mesa after he kind of got off the road. And my wife and I went there one day. I mean, I think it was our off day actually, not too that evening after the show. We went to the first games that we're playing, and so we'll stop by the stop by the cemetery and find him. Sure enough, and it wasn't some crazy, it's not some crazy mausoleum or anything, It's just this really nice. It's got his headstone, a really famous picture. You've probably seen off of in a couple of his album covers. That's the picture that they have etched there, and sure enough, Waylon Jennings. Actually, I wrote a column about it for the Tehachapi News. This was years ago when I was writing the Roadrunner Connection column, and I mentioned that it was like one of those moments where it's like, okay, I'm trying to summon one of the spirits of my past, and I grew up with that music, and my parents did, and all that stuff, trying to get a little help from the from the outlaw, Anyway, it was interesting, kind of a fun fact about Hohokam Stadium. When we come back to baseball, the Roadrunners get into their games at the WAC tournament, and they end up with North Dakota in the first round. So we'll talk about that, and then their first kind of setback of the tournament, which put them in the very, very difficult spot. We'll talk about that when we come back. This is Roadrunner Classic from Learfield, IMG College.
Yeah, I would go to their games when they played football, and that was how I would start the recruiting process. Well, I did that my whole career, even when I was with Augie at Fullerton. I really liked guys that had athleticism and a football mentality, and then of course they have to have a certain level of baseball skills also. But there's something about the football mentality that worked well with my coaching style. They weren't afraid of some of the things that I did, and not that if you didn't play football, I didn't hold it against you, but I really liked it. And then if you were a quarterback, then there was a leadership factor, and it seems like particularly with position players, pitchers, I don't remember that happening as much. The football player carryover, but with position players throughout my career, I always looked for that, and there was just something about the mentality, because I recruited mentality first. That was what I cared about first. If you didn't have that, I didn't care how good you were, skill-wise or as an athlete, baseball player. You had to have that mentality first, because if you didn't, you weren't going to make it in the program.
Welcome back to Roadrunner Classic. That was Bill Kernan, the head coach of the CESB Roadrunners back in 2015, talking about his sort of recruiting philosophy, and we got into that in the first sort of program as we remember the 2015 NCAA regional squad and WAC tournament champion Roadrunners. But it was important to kind of bring that up right now, because going into the games in Mesa, that mentality, whether it was a football player, and some of the guys he's referring to on that team, Joey Sanchez, for example, who was a quarterback on his high school football team, who came in and had a phenomenal sophomore season after a pretty forgettable freshman year. And then really, honestly, maybe it was just Coach Kernan had the ability to get more out of him, but that was the highlight of his career was his sophomore year at CSUB. He struggled after that. And then Jordy Hine was a wide receiver, Chaparral High School in Arizona, I believe, was his alma mater, and he had that football mentality, even though he was a smaller player, but he was a pretty good wide receiver in high school. So Coach Kernan looked for that, and that toughness. It's very important as we get into the WAC tournament to talk about that toughness. I'm Corey Costello. I'm the former voice of the Roadrunners, remembering the 2015 squad going through that process in the second episode. As we do that, we're into the meat and potatoes here. We're into the WAC tournament. First game of the tournament, kind of a ho-hum game. Didn't require a ton of toughness. It was a one-sided victory over North Dakota, 11-1. Not much happened in it. It was a 7-run mercy rule. Matter of fact, the Roadrunners walked it off in the bottom of the 7th because they had a 10 runs after 7 rule. And so Metzger led off with a triple. There was an error. He scored. Solomon Williams walked. Then let's see, Malik Jones flied out, but that brought in a run. Max Carter scored. Basically, it was a fielder's choice on an error that scored the winning run in the bottom of the seventh. It was a walk-off mercy rule, which has happened before for the Roadrunners. So 10 runs after 7, which meant even the home team could walk it off, so to speak, and they hit 10, it was over, and they did. So they beat North Dakota, pretty one-sided affair. Hayden Carter got the win, 7 complete, threw 94 pitches, didn't walk anybody, struck out 6, and only allowed 8 hits. So pretty easy outing for him, and that would be important later as we get into the toughness a little bit. And then the game against Seattle, the following night, just wasn't a good ball game for the Roadrunners. Seattle had a pretty good offense. They were the 1 seed in the tournament. They had a pretty good offense that year. They jumped out right away, and it was next thing you know, it's 5-0 out of nowhere. James Berrigan started. He struggled, went 2 1/3, gives up 7 runs on 8 hits. They homered in the first. It was pretty ugly right off the bat. And so he only goes 2 1/3. Garrett Nimmo comes in, but the issue there is Nimmo actually, they might need to use him. So they bring Nimmo in the third just to get out of the inning after they scored 2 more. So Nimmo throws 2/3 of an inning, throws 12 pitches, gets out of the jam, gets out of the inning. And then the most underrated performance in the WAC tournament happens. Now, when Coach Kernan and I, and again, remember, when we go through this show, it was 5 years ago. So even as Coach Kernan and I were talking and bringing things up, we even got some things wrong, and it wasn't until I went back and double-checked a few things and said, wait a second, this isn't right. We were talking about a performance out of the bullpen that night because, remember, it's a double elimination tournament. Roadrunners are already down 7-0, and they're trying not to get mercy ruled, right, on their own. And so not a lot of relief pitchers in the Bill Kernan bullpen. It's just the way he coaches. James Berrigan struggles. Garrett Nimmo, they're going to need him as a starter to come back in the loser's bracket, so you can't use him too much. Stephen G. was supposed to be the starter the next day. So they go to Nick Dermigian, the sidearm hurler, spot reliever, occasional midweek starter here and there. Derm was a awkward pitcher, just like I said, kind of a sidearm guy. But effective in certain situations. So when Coach Kernan and I were remembering it, I think I asked the question wrong, and I said Rogowski, which wasn't the case. Nick Rogowski actually pitched the winning at the very end of the tournament. But so when he talks about him, don't it was Dermigian, not Rogowski. I think that was my bad. But the important part here is Nick Dermigian comes into the ball game in the 4th. He throws 5 complete innings, gives up 2 runs, 4 hits, walks 2, strikes out 3, throws 90 pitches. The importance of this is when you look back, you think, goodness gracious, Nick Dermigian saved the bullpen. Because if Bill Kernan has to start calling on more from Garrett Nimmo or get Max Carter out there or Nick Rogowski or go down the list or AJ Monarez and guys that if he has to burn his relievers up, well, there's essentially 4 more games left out of the loser's bracket. And when you go to loser's bracket to battle back, you've added a couple games on your schedule. So Dermigian has probably the most underrated and forgotten performance in the WAC tournament because he goes out and throws 5 complete, not necessarily just cleanup duty, because at the time he comes in, he inherits a 7-0 deficit. And the runners pick up a couple runs the next few innings, but they lose at 9-3. But this was the turning point for the pitching staff, not by a starter having a killer performance, but by a reliever who was sparingly used throughout the season coming in and saving the rest of the bullpen. And again, here's Coach Kernan talking about that. I messed the question up and said Nick Rogowski, so just replace his references to Rogowski with Dermigian, and you'll be good.
Probably wouldn't have happened without that because they beat us up pretty good, and we never give up or anything. But and Rogowski had been a starter for us all year on Sunday, so it wasn't like I was using a nobody. But I even told him when he went in the game, I said, you can't be insulted by this, because we need to save everybody for this. And I know I'm going to be, if we make it to the end, I'm going to be able to use you again. So that's not what's going on here. This isn't like a mop-up. This is a big deal. And so you need to take this like a start, because it is. And if we really need this to be done, and we don't want to use anybody else. And he did it. And if he wouldn't have done that, if I'd have had to, use other guys, or if I don't know what would have happened, but I don't think it would have been the same.
It wasn't until probably a few days after the WAC tournament was over that I heard one of the assistant coaches say, Nick Dermidjian won the WAC tournament for us. Nick Dermidjian was the guy who saved the bullpen in a game that it was over, but we had to make an important decision and have a big-time performance, and that was it. So we talk about the wins, we talk about the big hits, you talk about the runs, and there's plenty more that to come. But really, the conference tournament was won in a 9-3 loss, and a seldom used reliever comes in and saves the bullpen to fight another day. That is the toughness that Coach Kernan talks about. That is the mentality he discusses, and that's what made this team very special. We're going to step away and come back. When we get back, the Roadrunners now find themselves in the losers bracket. Not easy to do. What that means as they march towards a historic WAC tournament championship. This is Roadrunner Classic. We're remembering the 2015 NCAA Regional Squad and WAC Tournament Champions for CESUB Baseball. I'm Corey Costello, former Roadrunner voice. We'll be back after this from Learfield IMG College.
That for Stephen G to go out and do that, and we got just enough runs off of their guy. That was pretty major. Not to mention that we were a little down after that loss, because we did get beat up pretty good, and they were down for about 5 minutes, and then when we came out the next day, they got right back on track, because they knew what they were there to do, and they I don't think they ever once for a second thought that it wasn't going to happen. It was just a bump in the road, but you still need somebody to go out and actually do it on the field, and G just goes out and just carves them up.
The voice of the legendary Bill Kernan, Roadrunner head coach 2008 through 2015. I say 8 because he actually got there before the program actually started. Might have even been late 7. But anyway, welcome back to Roadrunner Classic as we look back at the 2015 WAC Tournament Champion and NCAA Regional Squad for CESUB Baseball. Bill Kernan and I having a long chat about this show, and we've thrown a lot of those sound bites into this program. And he talked about right there, as we get back into the program, we talked about the loss to Seattle the night before, the Nick Dermidjian performance that essentially saved the bullpen. And then Stephen G, the next day, goes out and probably pitches the greatest game of his career. I mean, I would argue that, because he had some injury issues after that. And his career after that at CSUB, we didn't see as much of him as we were probably hoping to see. But he goes out against Sacramento State, who was a very good team. I think they came in as the 3 seed that year at 33-27 in a loser's bracket game. G goes 9 complete, no runs, throws a 4-hitter, walks 2, strikes out 2, throws 114 pitches, very, very efficient. The Roadrunners beat a very good Justin Dillon, and Bakersfield gets 1 right away. They get a second run in the 3rd, pick up another in the 5th, and 1 more in the 6th inning, and that was enough to get it done. And it was a win or go home. I mean, you had to do it. There was no way about it at all. And they got just enough offense. I mean, Jordy Hine goes 1 for 2, scores a run. David Metzger, Max Carter each have RBIs in that game. And they had a couple weird runs that scored as well. So, it was just it was a It's one of those games, obviously, elimination game. You got to go. And see, Sacramento State had won that tournament the year before doing the same thing. They had lost early and then bounced back to win it in 2014. So they were up against a team that had done it before in that fashion. And that's why it didn't make it really unprecedented. I think, as a matter of fact, it was been done 2 years prior to that before they did the weird pool play thing. But, it wasn't abnormal to have these teams come back from the losers bracket. So to face the team that had done that the year before, the defending tournament champions, was big, and CSUB got that. They got that one done, and they got the 4-0 victory. And again, very important pitching outing by one Stephen G, who went complete. Chance Guspeth was 3 for 3 in that game, scored a pair of runs. But the thing is, in the losers bracket, it's not easy, which meant you had to bounce right back, and I mean pretty much right back. There was about a 2-hour time difference, it might not even have been 2 hours. It wasn't a lot of time. It was about 90 minutes, 2 hours barely, to basically get ready for the next game. So what happens is you win a losers bracket game. Seattle had won another. Seattle was actually waiting for the next winner to play him again in what would have been a championship series. So you win the first two, especially after having a bye. You're in the championship series. Well, Seattle then sitting there waiting for a fresh team, or waiting for a team. They're fresh, and they're going to play a team that just came off of a game. And so in that case, they were going to play the Roadrunners, who they routed the night before, and then they're going to see them in a not-so-fresh state coming back. And I remember going into the clubhouse between games, like I said, a little downtime. I was kind of floating around, just wanted to check in on the team. And guys were pretty gassed. I mean, they were tired. You could definitely tell. But there was kind of a sense of like, we're just going to pull this together. We're going to have a quick thrown together meal here in the clubhouse, and then we're going to get back at it. And that's exactly what happened, because you get into this like mode. It's a survival mode, and they talk win or go home. But in a conference baseball tournament, it doesn't get any more win or go home than that. So you play one day in the late evening, and then you go to a night game against Seattle. Good ball game there. The one against Seattle, not to be not to be under. Both games were amazing. They'd play against Seattle in the coming days, but this one especially. Just to take you back, Seattle scored first in the top of the fifth to make it 1-0. It was a wild pitch, and then a single up the middle scored. And by the way, the starter for this game was Garrett Nimmo, who had pitched a couple outs the night before. So Nimmo comes in. He ends up giving up 3 runs total. But Nimmo gives up the first run in the fifth. Bakersfield comes back, bottom half of the 6th, and gets 2 runs back to take the lead. So in the 6th, or make that the 7th, I'm sorry, Chance Guspeth had a double, pitching error, or error by the pitcher, and then Guspeth gets the 3rd. Huff grounded out to the pitcher, but Solomon Williams got the 2nd, and then a single from Joey Sanchez to right center scores 2. And there you go. Roadrunners are back on top. Seattle, though, right back in the 8th. A home run down the right field line. One of the longest home runs I ever remember seeing hit in any ballpark, let alone a major league spring training facility. Landon Cray hit a ball literally down the right field line. It almost hit the bus parked over off the side of the bullpen. It was absolutely crushed. Then they got a double. Then they got another single, and so that was that 2 runs just like that, bang bang, and the runners are down again. But then they pick up another run to tie it in the 8th inning, and this is where it gets very interesting, because here we are going into the 8th inning, tied. Seattle picks up 2 in the 9th. Bakersfield, though, down by 2 in the 9th. A crazy 9th inning. So a ball was hit to the runner at first. Joey Sanchez was hit by a pitch. Jordy Hine walked. Miles Jones then grounds out. Hines gets the 2nd. Sanchez gets the 3rd. David Metzger then grounds out. Hines advances the 3rd. Sanchez goes to second, and then Hines scored on a wild pitch to tie the game. So a wild pitch ties the game against Seattle in the bottom of the ninth inning, with Seattle literally 1 out away from winning it all. They're 1 out away. They throw a wild pitch. Jordy Hines comes in to score. Not even a lot of clean hits in that inning. They just found a way. And that was kind of what the team talked about all year long. They'd have this sort of this theme that was like, find a way, they would like sing this song in the dugout, like find a way, and that's exactly what they did. And so Bakersfield finds a way. In the ninth inning, they tied on a wild pitch. And then probably one of the most interesting and or controversial calls of the tournament comes up a few minutes later. But before that call could ever happen, this came from a coaching decision, by the way. One of the things you never do, and that is anger the baseball gods. So it being a lead for the 1 seed in the bottom of the ninth inning, a couple outs, or at least 1 out, the Western Athletic Conference powers that be decided that they wanted to get a jump start on traffic. They wanted to get out of there, right? It had been a long day. They're going to seal up this championship, and they won't have to work Sunday. They decided to take the championship trophy, the banner, all the awards, down to the field to get ready for the championship celebration. They set it all up behind the Seattle dugout, I swear. And after the first out was recorded, I did not see this. Coach Kernan doesn't remember seeing this, but I heard reports from fans. And by the way, the Bakersfield fans were unbelievable in that series. They were loud, they were rowdy. Brian Hines, Jordy Hines' late father, was having so much fun at the tournament with the other parents, and it wasn't well attended, so he's yelling, and you hear him. I mean, years later, I talked to Seattle fans that were like, gosh, your fans were so annoying, but we wish we had that, because they didn't have that. The Bakersfield fans, the parents, made such a huge impact. But one of the parents told me later they saw confetti pop in the Seattle dugout, one of those little party poppers, after the first out was recorded. Now, it was bad enough that the conference decided to put the trophy behind the dugout like they were ready for the celebration, but they made a fatal mistake potentially in doing that, and then be doubled down by somebody popping confetti, which I can't attest to, but somebody said they saw it in the dugout after the game as well. So those two things happen, and then, as I mentioned, Jordy Hines ends up scoring on a wild pitch, and we go into extra innings at that point. So you've already got this weird sort of thing going on with the conference bringing the trophy out early. And then you go into extra innings. We're going to come back and we're going to talk extra innings, because the extra inning was a critical potential coaching mistake made. And I'm not a guy to criticize coaches, but this one, even to this day, you go, he did what? And that might have really helped the Roadrunners' case to force a championship Sunday. We'll talk about that when we come back, remembering the 2015 NCAA Regional and WAC Championship squad for CSUB Baseball. I'm Corey Costello, and this is Roadrunner Classic from Learfield IMG College.
We pretty much were the same. That's one of the things that you gauge about your team as much as you can. You know how it's, especially if you run into some adversity early, like we did there. You know, do they back off? But we were the same. I mean, they were. That's why we were able to hang in there the night before, because they just were the same all the time, and they never got disappointed when things weren't going their way, and they really did believe that they were going to get it done. I mean, there really was never any other feeling in the dugout than that, because we have 9 innings to play, and before it's over, you know, it's going to be us. And you know, they had trained that way the whole year, and we always tried to make them come back from things, even during the practices and the training stuff, because that's one of the beauties about baseball. There's no clocks.
Back here on Roadrunner Classic, final segment of this hour. Man, there's just so much story left. It's amazing. We'll have to get into the actual championship game. Well, we can get into a little bit maybe in this segment. We'll have to get into the championship and winning it next hour, and then we'll get into the regionals and wrap this thing up. But man, there's just so much story, so much going on. Like the trophy being down early at the Seattle dugout before after there's one out recorded, and then the runners getting a wild pitch to tie the game, and then we go into the last inning and go into the ninth. Now, I know for a fact that folks that worked at Seattle U, they no longer work there. I knew them and a lot of us talked that summer. I want to say it was that summer at one of the big conventions for athletics administrators and stuff in Orlando. They were there, and they were the ones kind of complaining about how our fans were so rambunctious in Mesa. They like to pregame a little bit in the parking lot, a little tailgate action. They are from Bakersfield, come on. But no, they're mad at their coach for a couple things. They're mad at the conference putting the trophy down early. They're mad at their coach, and the reason why is 10th inning. Seattle basically they get a single, get a couple hits, as a matter of fact. But they get a pop-up with after an intentional walk, and that ends the inning after the runners actually loaded the bases on purpose. But they get a pop-up, they don't get any runs. So here's the deal. Seelman leads the inning off with a single. Chance Guspeth singles as well. So now he gets a single. Actually, was a bunt single. Seelman second. Guspeth on first, and then Cody White gets the third base on a sacrifice. Guspeth gets the second. Seelman third. I'm sorry, that's what it was. And then there was a pinch hit. Now check this out. This is the crazy part. So it's second and third, and there's nobody at one out at the time. Now, baseball knowledge says you want to potentially create the double play. Right, so first base is open. The Roadrunners did it the inning before. Intentionally walk a guy, load the bases, no biggie. Set yourself up for either an easy force out or, in this case, the double play. So they bring in Logan Trowbridge to pinch hit for Ross Huff. Huff had caught the game. Trowbridge had caught the game before. Those guys platooned their starts, but Trowbridge comes in as a pinch hitter. So they decide to make a pitching change. Seattle does at this point. So they take out the pitcher at the time, Kyle Doyle, bring in Ryan Freitas. Now, Freitas was a decent pitcher on the season. And maybe it was a lefty-righty matchup. Don't ask me why. But check this out. So a guy who's been in the bullpen warming up, they bring him into the game, bring Freitas in, and they intentionally walk Trowbridge. Now, that loads the bases up, right, with one away. And it brings Joey Sanchez to the plate with the winning run at third base, bottom of the 10th inning. But this was the crazy part. They brought Freitas out of the bullpen to intentionally walk somebody. So this kid is set up for failure immediately. So he walks Trowbridge, and this was, you have to throw 4 pitches. So he throws 4 balls to walk Trowbridge, set up the double play. Makes sense. Well, not really, because he then walks Joey Sanchez on a 3-1 count, and the Roadrunners win. They deny Seattle winning the championship, and they force a championship Sunday. Now, baseball knowledge does say, yes, maybe I want to set up the double play. But it does not tell you at nowhere in the game do you want to bring a guy in out of the bullpen to intentionally walk the first hitter he is going to see, and then of course he's going to struggle. The poor kid came in, he threw a total of 8 pitches, 9 pitches, 8 of them were balls. He threw 1 strike in the 9 pitches that he threw. He walked Joey Sanchez after being told to intentionally walk. Nobody understood. Nobody working for Seattle U. It never came up with the coaches. As far as I'm concerned, Bill Kernan still to this day goes, I don't know why he did that. You don't bring a guy into the bullpen to walk somebody. That's what they did. Now, maybe it's a bit of being there before. Remember, Seattle hadn't been in the tournament the year before. They had a good turnaround. They came back to make the tournament as the 1 seed. But they intentionally walk a guy coming out of the bullpen. He intentionally walks somebody. And then, of course, he walks the next guy with the pressure on, bases loaded. Kid never had a chance. Talk about being set up for failure. So this gives the Roadrunners a shot at a Sunday championship. I'm gonna set the Sunday championship a little bit too. I'm gonna set it up because it's kind of weird. So at the WAC tournament in baseball, everybody would stay in the same hotel pretty much. Not me that year. I was staying in the Costello Cruiser out in the desert, out in the middle of nice place, by the way, out by like Fountain Hills, Arizona. Beautiful community. If you ever get a chance to visit, I encourage you. When we were allowed to visit places again. But the team, and it was always weird the years I did go with the team, and this was the same thing this championship day. As teams lose, they check out. They don't stick around. They leave. They go back home. So championship Sunday, there's 2 teams left. It's Bakersfield and Seattle, and like they always set up a breakfast for the teams. Well, you eat together. So like Bakersfield and Seattle are eating breakfast together. I mean, you're not really eating amongst, you've got your team tables, they've got theirs, but it's like kind of awkward. You're sitting there, there's a winner take all game, and you're basically eating with your opponent because it's all in the same hotel in the same breakfast area. And that set up the championship game for Sunday. And again, the decision was in the rotation's turn. It was Nick Rogowski, right? It would have been his turn. It was a Sunday. I know his then girlfriend and then now wife, who had played soccer at CSUB. She was Liv Borkenstein. She sent me a message that night before and said, I think I'm going to come to Arizona. Like, I don't want to make him nervous. And I said, well, I think he could use all the support. But he didn't start. But we knew we would see Rogowski at some point in the game. And some of her friends from the soccer team, they made the trip to Arizona, drove all night to get there. But the decision was made to start Hayden Carter again. And he had thrown over 100 pitches in his first outing, but it was a pretty, right at 100, like 101. But it was only a 7-inning game against North Dakota. He was pretty fresh, and so why not put the pitcher of the year on the mound to potentially win it for your team on Championship Sunday? And that's what the Roadrunners did. They got the opportunity to play in a championship game after a weird, crazy, baseball god-angering pair of losers bracket games. They go in on Sunday, and they decide, you know what? We're going to put it in the hands of the pitcher of the year, Hayden Carter, who threw 100-some-odd pitches in a game we cruised to open this tournament. And now we're going to give it to our guy, but keep Nick Rogowski close because he's probably going to see some innings. And that's how we set up Championship Sunday. When we come back, hour number 2, we will take you through the final moments, the last game, and the Roadrunners finally, after being closed for a couple seasons, punching their ticket to the NCAA Regionals. This is Roadrunner Classic. I'm Corey Costello, former voice of the Roadrunners, voice of the 2015 team. We are remembering the 2015 Roadrunners, the WAC champions, and the NCAA Regional squad for CSUB baseball. More about their championship. We'll get into the regionals too. What a fun time at UCLA's Jackie Robinson Stadium. We'll get to that when we come back for hour number 2 of this edition of Roadrunner Classic from Learfield IMG College.
It's time for Roadrunner Classic, a look back at great seasons in CSU Bakersfield history. Presented by Dignity Health, Hello Human Kindness, Stockdale Podiatry Group, We Treat Your Feet, Knights Jewelers. If you don't know jewelry, know your jeweler. Barbich, Hooper, King, Dill, Hoffman, providing peace of mind in an increasingly complex world. And by the Birchtold Equipment Company, Bakersfield's leading equipment company.
Welcome to the second hour of Roadrunner Classic as we remember the 2015 NCAA Regional Squad WAC Tournament Champion baseball team for CSUB Athletics. I'm Corey Costello. Welcome back to the second hour of the program as we're finally getting into the meat and the potatoes and the the glory as the Roadrunners won the 2015 WAC tournament. I was a radio voice of that team, and throughout this program, last week into this week as well, we've been checking in with former head coach Bill Kernan, who was a coach of that squad, and we set the premise of the program, of the program in terms of bringing the baseball team up to snuff, the years they got close, and now finally 2015, here they were, just one game away after a loser's bracket comeback in the WAC tournament, walking in the winning run, a walk-off walk, so to speak, the night before, where the baseball gods were sort of angered by the conference bringing the trophy out early when Seattle hadn't quite wrapped it up yet. And now we're on to Sunday. We're on to Game Day, Championship Sunday, and it's Hayden Carter, the WAC Pitcher of the Year, on the mound for CSUB. This was the moment where it all kind of started for the Roadrunners as they tried to beat top-seeded Seattle for the second time in as many days as the Roadrunners had lost to them once and then beat them the night before in the first game of the championship series, and here they were in Game 2 on a Sunday afternoon. Hayden Carter came out and pitched, and he got roughed up a bit. Gave up 3 in the third inning, and then they ended up and it wasn't a pretty third or second inning, I should say, for Hayden Carter. Gave up a home run, a couple hard hit balls, some singles, doubles, extra base hits. It was rough for him, but he went 5 1/3 in that ball game, and then Nick Rogowski came to the contest. But really setting the stage is there wasn't a ton of offense. The Roadrunners got one more back in the top of the 7th to make it 3-1, and then Seattle U got that run back in the bottom of the 7th to make it 4-1. So it's 4-1 with 6 outs left in the game for Bakersfield as they go to bat in the top of the 8th inning. And I want to pick up my conversation right here with Coach Kernan because this really tells the story of that tournament. Remember this team, he turned the keys over, so to speak, with them on from the fall on. He said, you guys run the show. And then he had to rein him in a little bit halfway through the year. And then again, it sort of went back to they ran the show. And nothing was more important than that sort of reminder when it came down to crunch time. And, late afternoon on a Sunday in Mesa, Arizona, with a trip to the regionals on the line. So I want to pick up that conversation I had with Coach Kernan as we talk about going into that top of the 8th inning.
Obviously, I got a little nervous in the 8th. We're down 4-1 in the 8th inning because I knew they had that relief guy available. They had a guy that had like the best changeup I think maybe I've ever seen, and Skylar Genger. Genger, oh my God, he had this changeup that was unbelievable, and so we knew they still had him, and I want to say we did that with hits. And I remember going into the 8th inning, the decision I had to make as a coach was, do I say anything to them? And I was so tempted to have one of my team meetings in front of the dugout like I do during the season a lot. And I decided not to because I remember thinking to myself, if I do that now, they're going to go, wait a second, I thought you turned this over to us. I thought we were going to be, because I went that whole tournament coaching it exactly the same way. I did not have those kind of meetings. I didn't ever try to get them pumped up. I just let them, I just trusted them. And I think if I would have done that at that time, maybe we still would have done it, but I have a feeling it would have thrown them off track a little. They go, what? We're fine. I don't think so I just kept my mouth shut. And I remember they got together in the on-deck circle because at the start of that inning, I went out and the 2 guys that were going to be on deck, I remember going up to the top of the steps, and the hitters got together. The first 3 hitters got together, and Genger was he in the game yet, or did they bring him in relief?
I'm looking right now. Let's see. Genger was in the 8th inning, yeah, because they brought in Freitas after that.
So Genger was pitching.
Yes.
And we knew about his changeup, and we had so much trouble with that kid during the year. And so the hitters got together, and I heard the conversation. They said, look changeup. Forget every other pitch and just look changeup, because when he throws it, the actual pitch itself is just a 70-mile-an-hour fastball right down the middle like batting practice. So it's because you're looking for other pitches and things like that it's so good. So let's forget about every pitch and let's just look changeup. So they actually put their own hit plan together in the on-deck circle before the start of that inning. And I remember thinking, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. I would have never told. So I was so glad that I just kept my mouth shut and didn't say anything, because they actually figured it out.
And boy, did they ever figure it out that inning. Here's how that 8th inning went for Bakersfield. It was a Trowbridge line out to start the inning, hard line out. Again, he hit a changeup very hard. Chris Caton walked. Drew Seelman pinch ran, which is key because Chance Guspeth was the one they had pinch hit for, and because he'd struggled in that game a bit. So Chris Caton came in, and then when he walked, Drew Seelman came in to pinch run. Joey Sanchez had a single to left. Seelman got to second. Jordy Hine then singled to left field. Sanchez to second. Seelman to third. And then this pitch, the game-tying hit, Miles Jones got a pitch on the inner half that he destroyed down the left field line. And at that moment right there, I think everybody in the stadium and in that Roadrunners dugout for sure realized that even though it's just the top of the 8th, that the ball game was pretty much over.
When Miles did that, of course, Jordy was at first, so he walked home. And everybody, that was actually the moment when I think they knew they got it done, because Metzger's coming up. We got a runner at second. I mean, it's just, this is over. This is over. I mean, this is good. And, I think his hit was to like right center, maybe.
It was, yep.
Yeah, and, so of course Miles scores easy.
It was a 3-run RBI for Miles Jones, of course, to tie the game at 4. And then Jordy Hine coming in to score Miles Jones coming to score on the David Metzger single to right center. And then there'll be 2 outs after that. 4 runs on 4 hits and 1 left on base. The Roadrunners did chase Genger, who they struggled with. They finally got a little bit against them because of that plan Coach Kernan talked about when he decided to sit back and let them do it. So now, that was an amazing inning. I mean, I'm going to tell you, that pitch to Miles Jones, I can't – some of the highlights are still on YouTube. If you check out the CSUB Athletics page, it was inner half, and it was up, and it was – Miles Jones is a tremendous hitter. The guy's still in professional baseball in the Rockies organization. And he just – you want to talk about wheelhouse. Up kind of inner half, and it just he timed it perfectly, drilled it down the line, rattled in the corner, and everybody on base could run. I mean, you had Caton, you had Seelman, who's fast, you had Sanchez, and you had Hine at first base. Jordy Hine was one of the fastest. I mean, he was a wide receiver in high school. We talked about it. He's one of the fastest guys that the Runners have ever seen. Easily scores from first, and there's Miles with that. Miles is such an ice-cold player. I mean, he smiles. He's a great guy, but game time, there was no emotion on his face when he comes to the plate. You want to talk about just a pro. He'll flash that smile when times are good, but, man, to see him just come and handle it like a pro was huge. And that gave the Roadrunners the lead they needed going into the bottom of the 8th inning. And really, it was kind of – the 8th was anticlimactic. I mean, Seelman ends up in right field. Again, that's important. We'll get to that in a second. For CSUB, they got a strikeout, a fly out, and a ground out. No runs, hits, errors. It was only, a matter of fact, 4 pitches thrown in the entire inning. That was it for Rogowski, who came in and pitched 3 2/3. And then in the 9th for Bakersfield, pretty easy as well. About a 7-pitch inning. Grotjohn ground out, Trowbridge ground out, and Seelman did get a single, and then Joey Sanchez lined out on a hard hit ball. So then we go to the ninth inning. That last out is very, very hard. So how is that going to go? We're going to talk about that ninth inning when we come back, as the Roadrunners are on the verge of capturing the 2015 NCAA regional bid for the Western Athletic Conference in Mesa, Arizona. We'll get to that and the championship call for the Roadrunners when we come back. This is Roadrunner Classic from Learfield IMG College.
In fact, I don't know if I've maybe told maybe two other people this. I remember standing in the dugout in that ninth inning when we had the 5-4 lead, and I swear to God, I know this sounds really stupid and corny, but I felt like I'd been there before. I felt like I just had this really calm feeling. I said, this is going to get done. It was so weird. It was almost like a deja vu thing. It wasn't so specific about pitches or guys doing this or that with the game, but I had this really good feeling in that last inning. Like I just knew it was going to happen.
Well, I'm glad Bill Kernan was calm in the ninth inning, because I sure wasn't. Welcome back to Roadrunner Classic. It's Corey Costello here as we remember the 2015 WAC champion and NCAA regional baseball squad for CSU Bakersfield. Man, I wasn't calm, and I'm going to get to the call here in a second, but it's hard. I'd been through all that. Everything we've talked about on this show last week, setting the foundation of the team in 2015, getting close in 2011 to sit there and just kind of get your heart ripped out on Selection Monday when they didn't call your name. And then in 2013, watching the regular season champions, being there when they won the regular season title, but that didn't mean a regional bid. And then they lose in some funky setup of a conference tournament on one pitch, essentially, after a weird lightning delay in the middle of Texas, And so it was like, here we are a couple seasons later, and man, we're so close again. Like, is it going to happen? I mean, and so I was kind of a wreck. And I put my emotion into the work. I mean, everything I do, all my championship calls, I've had the pleasure of having several. They're not perfect, and I'm the first to admit that, because I'm not a pro. I mean, a lot of what you hear now, you'll hear pros and even people that are doing stuff now for CSUB. They're kind of hired guns. They weren't living it like I was living it. Having been employed there, having been somebody who championed the program as a member of the media before that, trying to sell people the idea that this can work. I mean, so much so, I'll even tell this story, the day of the championship game, because of the sort of baseball faux pas that happened the night before when the WAC leadership decided to bring the trophy out early and put it behind the Seattle dugout in the ninth when they were leading, and then it all kind of fell apart. I went to Dave Chafin, who was in charge of championships for the WAC, that afternoon in the press box at Hohokam, and I said, Dave, I don't care what the score is. We can be up by 10 runs. We can be up by 20 runs. It doesn't matter to me. That trophy does not leave this press box, and I might have used some colorful language, until the final out is recorded. I do not want to see that trophy leave. And I had this conversation with multiple people, and he goes, yeah, I know. We were kind of jumping the gun yesterday. And I said, it doesn't matter what you did to Seattle. That trophy doesn't leave here. And ultimately it didn't. But we get to the moment that we'd been anticipating after a couple quick outs, and then one batter is hit, and then one batter was walked, then a batter was hit, and then you got 2 on. Seattle calls a timeout to talk to their base runners, and then that sets up the big final pitch with Grant Newton, a pretty good hitting first baseman, at the plate for Seattle U, with the runners leading 5-4 in the bottom of the ninth inning and 2 on.
Back with a fresh baseball here, 3-1 the count. Grant Newton at the plate, tying run at second, winning run at first for Seattle. The 3-1 pitch. Hit into center field, right field. Here's Seelman coming over. He makes the grab, and the CSUB Roadrunners are your Western Athletic Conference baseball champions. Pinch me, I gotta be dreaming, but then again, if I am, don't wake me up. The Roadrunners are your 2015 WAC baseball champions, and Bill Kernan, the old playwright, just wrote a fantastic final scene for the Roadrunners. CSUB winning this one 5-4, and baby, we're going to the regionals. Bill Kernan, his last goal as head coach of CSUB is he wanted to go to the regionals with this team. Mission accomplished. Bakersfield has won the WAC championship and is heading to the NCAA tournament. The second WAC title for the Roadrunners this year, the first in baseball. And what a team win for CSUB. 5-4 is our final. And Bill Kernan soaking it all in right now as the team dogpiles at the pitcher's mound. Your Western Athletic Conference champions are the CSUB Roadrunners.
There was, man, the moment that the program that I'd kind of seen grow from nothing to a regional. There was a lot of pride in that moment for me. There's a lot of vindication in that moment as well, just because you have the naysayers throughout the years. I was happy for the parents. I was happy for the kids. I was happy for Coach Kernan. Because I know what he had been through personally to get this program to that point, the fights that he had to fight for his program, the battles that he had tried to get, the fact he did a lot of this without a lot of resources that other schools had, even within the conference. I was proud of that moment. I was proud of that call. Wasn't perfect. You can hear at some point I'm kind of choking back tears because, I mean, I was shaking going to the post-game show because, like, that emotion again, and I did it with basketball the following year, and it just, when you're in it, when you live it, when you breathe it, when it was your livelihood, when it wasn't just a game check, like I'm gonna get a check to do a game. I mean, my wife and I went to this tournament. We towed the Costello Cruiser with us. We towed our RV to Mesa. We brought loads and loads. Our RV was literally like a mobile studio. I brought boxes and boxes of camera equipment and stuff because we did our TV show live from Mesa. I was editing video at the campground at night. I recorded that radio call on my cell phone because I knew I'm gonna need this sound pretty soon. I can't wait for the radio station to send it to me or something. I need to roll on it. So I recorded, I had my phone kind of by my mouth as I recorded the call, thinking, okay, hopefully this goes well and I got the sound right away to use, and I did. So just little things like that. I mean, and so I'm living it, I mean, it's funny, after we ran down to celebrate, my wife and I, it's funny, ran into the field and we celebrated with some people and took pictures with the trophy, and then we were like, wow, we got to get back to Bakersfield. The team jumped on the bus real quick. I was like, we got to get back to Bakersfield too, because it's Selection Monday tomorrow and we're going to a regional. And her and I hightailed back to the campground. We hooked our RV up and we got on the road and we drove all night long. And then we got back to Bakersfield at 2:30 in the morning. That's what I did. That's what you hear in that call. You hear that kind of dedication. You hear that kind of buy into a program. You don't hear a game check. You don't hear a side gig. This was life for me. And that moment was so big, because that program, man, that was like a kid, to watch it grow up from nothing, from not even having a field in 2008 to getting a team scratched together, to all the good kids that went through that program, the good coaches, and then to finally see it come to fruition with a trip to the regionals. It was definitely something special to watch the boys dogpile and get the trophy out. And Logan Trowbridge, I won't forget, he went and took the Bakersfield flag off the out, because they put all the team flags along the baselines, all the teams participating in the tournament. He went and grabbed the Bakersfield flag off and was carrying it over his shoulders like he'd won the Olympics. And someone from the conference, might have been Dave who I was talking about, said something like, "Hey, you can't take that." And he goes, "Yes, I am." And that kid wore that thing, and it's in all the pictures, the banner, and Trowbridge had it around his neck like a cape, and he took it home with the man. And the one thing about that too, that moment, and you even hear in the call a little bit where I sort of stutter, the ball's going to center field or right field, because I knew all season long Chance Guspeth was in right. Chance Guspeth was our right fielder, and that's our guy. Chance is a lockdown fielder. He's got a cannon for an arm. Chance is going to gets any ball within his neighborhood. first thing I think as I see it hits me, oh my God, that's not Gus Bethton-Wright. Because 2 innings before, remember, Caton had pinch hit for him. Seelman went into the game. And Drew Seelman, we didn't see a lot of Drew Seelman throughout the season. Pinch hits here and there, occasional spot start. But Drew Seelman really hadn't played very much. So the kid gets to catch, and that was not an easy ball to catch. It was a sinking line drive to right, and if you watch the video, he has to bend over and catch it kind of awkwardly with his glove at his waist. If that ball gets down, the game is over, because you've got runners at first and second, both who move very well. That ball gets down, the game is over, and we're not doing this show right now, right? A lot of lives are different. So my first thought in that moment was, oh my God, that's not Chance Gusbett. But Drew Seelman got it done, man. He made the catch, and then ran straight in. And Nick Rogowski, I was so proud of him, man. He was a quality kid, and just he battled through some starts at the end of the season. And I know he was nervous going into Sunday, knowing he was going to see a big chunk of innings after Hayden Carter pitch what he could do. And Carter, what a bulldog to come out and start that game and give up a few more runs than he was used to giving up, but then letting the team bounce back. And to have Rogo get the victory was nice. He definitely deserved it. And what a moment for that program, and for a radio announcer that had been hanging around that team for a long time to been through 2 years of heartbreak in 11 and 2013, and then finally 2015 to see it come to fruition in that moment. And really all the investment, professionally, personally, into the program, to have that happen was big for me and big for other people as well. And definitely there was so much more emotion around that. I got so much I almost feel like we should have done a third show about this. I even found the old post-game audio of Bill Kernan and Hayden Carter talking, but anyway, I think we gotta jump into a break. But when we come back, we're going to talk regionals. Matter of fact, we'll leave the break right now with the sound of Bill Kernan and Hayden Carter post-game in Mesa in 2015 as we come back with the regionals now. Runners on their way to UCLA in 2015. We'll be back. This is Roadrunner Classic from Learfield IMG College.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk in athletics about teams and guys that don't give up and staying with it. No, don't get disappointed when you get behind. Don't get disappointed in a tournament if you lose, because you can still come back. And there's a lot of talk about that. But there really aren't very many teams that are this special to do what we did. Well, it's definitely the icing on the cake. I mean, we think we had a lot going on and had some things done and had the program built, and we had respect, and we had, we had it to being competitive nationally. But until you actually get into the playoffs in the NC2A tournament with the elite teams, that's a step that you've got to take to make it really be legitimate. So we're finally able to do that.
Well, it's been a great ride. Couldn't ask for a better group of guys to win it with. In terms of my performance, I felt good. The adrenaline was going, so I didn't feel like any tightness or soreness in my arm. I was going to go as long as I could, and I'm just so glad we finally brought CSUB a regional team. Well, during the games, it's really stressful. I mean, you kind of have like a bunch of heart attacks during the game, but no, when you win it, it feels good, and you kind of forget all those stressful situations. And no, it was just fun. It was good to win a regional or the WAC tournament finally. We did it for all the players that came before us, J-Mo, J-Rod, Martine McCarthy, and then some of the guys I played with, Kevin Younger, Kale Brockmeyer, Oscar Sinai, Aikenhead. So this is for them, the players that came before us. I'm just excited to win.
My whole history is, there's some places that you play and you're just, for me, like, for example, Cal Poly. Oh, my God. I don't care how good or bad they were. My teams didn't play well there. and then there's some other places that you go and you just always played well at UCLA. Even my Northridge teams, our Fullerton teams, always played well at UCLA for some reason. So I felt good about that. And like you said, the fact that we actually had a little bit of a history there, too. They were the number one national seed, so that was a little tough. But yeah, I felt good about where we were gonna go. They weren't intimidated. They were comfortable. We just played our regular game, I think.
Welcome back to Roadrunner Classic, recapping the 2015 NCAA Regionals WAC Tournament baseball team for CSUB Baseball. Bill Kernan talking about the draw after the Roadrunners won the WAC Tournament, which we've been through, and now it's time for the regional. Selection Monday, the name is called right at the top of the show because, as Coach Kernan pointed out, the number 1 overall seed was UCLA. So on to Jackie Robinson Stadium we go. And the history that Coach Kernan is talking about, we covered in the very first episode of this show when we were talking about sort of the foundations of the program. There was a victory back in 2011 at UCLA, beating, as a matter of fact, Garrett Colt, who went number 1 in the draft that year for the UCLA Bruins, went to the Pirates at the time, and they had Trevor Bauer on that team. I mean, it was some guys that did okay for themselves in baseball. But we got one win in that series, and that was pretty big considering our team was kind of scrappy and had no business really competing with a UCLA. So we get that draw. So back to Jackie Robinson Stadium, and again, going back to that sort of vindication. Here we were, 4 years removed from winning at UCLA, one game and kind of turning some heads then. Coach Savage certainly had we had his attention because he remembered that from 2011, and he brought it up in his pregame interviews. Like, look, this Bakersfield team, man, like they're good, and we're gonna have to earn every bit against them. So we get them in the first game. I mean, not a ton on that one to brag about, but it was nice to go back to UCLA kind of vindicated as we're even keel now. Like, we're in the regionals just like you are. You might be the number 1 seed, but you might be 42-14. We might be 36-22-1, but we earned a spot here just like you did. And so, we'll lose that once. We scored first, as a matter of fact, in the ball game. But it was a Logan Trowbridge RBI single that runners put 2 hits together in that game and in that inning and a walk, and took a 1-0 lead. Pretty close ball game, and UCLA broke it open a little bit in the 4th, 5th, and 6th, and then they pretty much picked up a run apiece after that. So a 7-2 loss right off the bat. So it means you go in a loser's bracket, obviously comfortable there, right? And Maryland and Ole Miss were in that bracket as well, in that regional. Now, Ole Miss had been in Omaha the year before. They were a College World Series participant. They had some good players on that team, Errol Robinson being one of them. He's still in the Dodgers organization, I believe. He was matter of fact, he was the nephew of Dr. Thomas Wallace, the Vice President of Student Affairs, who kind of oversees athletics at CSUB. So it was kind of a family deal. And so anyway, we get them in the next game, in an elimination game. And just watching them, I remember watching them warm up the day. So we get the first loss, and we come back on Saturday for the afternoon contest. And I'm watching Ole Miss take infield, and I'm looking at this SEC school. I mean, they got guys at third base, not even starters. I mean, backups. They look like they should be starting on the Ole Miss football team. And then we go out and take infield, and we had a lockdown infield, don't get me wrong, but when you look at the eyeball test, David Metzger, Joey Sanchez, you had Solomon Williams, who was a tall drink of water at first, and Miles Jones certainly wasn't a slouch at short. But you look at our guys, and you're like, wow, you can stack them on his shoulders to be as tall as them, right? Eyeball-wise, you're going, wow, this is you talk about a physical difference. But you want to talk about a great ball game. I mean, it was as tight as can be, but the difference in that ball game was Solomon Williams, and the only runs for Bakersfield coming in the 4th inning. Leadoff double by David Metzger, and then Solomon Williams with a home run to right field. And Coach Kernan had some insight to why Solomon Williams hit a home run in that spot in the order.
He had wanted to bat 4th all year, and I wouldn't let him do it until he earned it. I said, "You got to earn it, man. We need you to." The reason he didn't hit more home runs is because he had a shoulder problem.
Mm-hmm.
His right shoulder would pop out, and so he had to kind of inside out his swing a lot. And so otherwise he would have hit a lot more home runs in his career with us than he did. But, I said, we need that kind of production out of that spot. I said, you should be hitting 4th, no doubt about it. I want you to, you want to, but you have to earn it. And I kept that over his head all year long. And I think I probably did hit him 4th once in a while, but it wasn't a consistent thing. I'll never forget, he comes up to me before that game, and I'm putting the lineup card together, and I made a couple of changes. I think I moved Grosjean up higher, and I forget what some of the things that I usually don't do, but I did that day. And he said, Coach, you're going to have to bat me fourth. And I said, really? And he goes, yeah, it's time. He goes, I need to bat fourth. I'm just telling you right now, don't worry, I'm going to get it done. I got to bat fourth. And I had the lineup card right in front of me. And I'm writing, I'd written in the first two names. I had Hine, and then I had Grosjean, and then I was going to put Metzger, of course, batting third. And I said, all right, I believe you. And I put it fourth. And when he hit that home run, see, that's another one of those things. They were telling me what to do.
Yeah.
They knew what to do. It was, I get chills thinking about it even now. And he hits that home run, and he comes back in the dugout. And, of course, when he comes right to me and goes, told ya.
And that's the way that Coach Kernan rolled a lot. I mean, a lot of the times his lineups, it used to drive our sports information baseball guy, Matt Turk, absolutely crazy. Because he'd be like, Coach, you got a lineup? And he'd be like, yeah, I'll get you. I mean, there was like a deadline. You had to have it 30 minutes before first pitch or whatever it was. And it was like usually the 31 minutes before first pitch before the lineup was in. Because Coach Kernan had to take a lot of things into consideration. I watched him one time at Northridge, a game we were playing. He didn't know who was going to bat he didn't know who wanted to play right field that day. It might have been the same season. Anyway, he says batting practice will determine it today. And it came down to Chris Caton and probably Chance Cuspeth, and Caton hit a home run like in his last shot at BP, and they're like, he goes, okay, walk off home run and BP, you're starting today. It used to drive Matt Turk crazy, but Coach Kernan would play that game in terms of just he wanted all the information before he made a lineup. So Solomon Williams hits the home run. There's a lot of aspects of this game as well that are super important. Another one being Hayden Carter. Hayden Carter comes out and starts. Granted, he had just started the week before. He pitched 2 games at the WAC tournament. The win against North Dakota of like 114 pitches there. Came out through about 100 pitches in a no decision in the championship game. And that was not a super popular decision. Well, at least some of the local media. And I was sort of arguing with them. Zach Ewing, who was the sports editor at the time of the Californian, was on social media. I can't believe they're going to throw this kid out there again and hit the damage that could be done to his arm. And I finally said, Zach, he's not getting drafted, man. Like, this is it for Hayden Carter. He wants to go out pitching in a regional. Like, this kid wants the ball right now. And he was, and more on how he closed it out, but he was super, super important in that game. And he threw an absolute gem in that ball game. And more on his performance in a second. But pitching, timely hitting, and defense won this ball game in the regionals. And there was a play that to this day didn't make ESPN top 10 that night, although they ran plenty of highlights. It should have. It was a travesty. Ball hit to deep left center with the potential. It was a potential go-ahead shot. Jordy Hine with an unbelievable climbing the wall. I mean, taking a piece of the fence with him as his foot goes up, and takes this ball off the wall and robs what would have been a 2-run home run to give Ole Miss the lead. And Bill Kernan, upon watching the replay, had a pretty interesting find in his review of that ball game.
I was just watching the game before we talked, and the first thing they did when they showed the replay of that, it happened in real time, and then the announcers made their comments. Then they showed a replay of it, and after the replay, they immediately shot in on Bianca, their head coach, and you could read his lips. He said, "You've got to be kidding." Watch it. He says, "You've got to be kidding me."
It still stands as to this day one of the greatest catches I've ever seen, and it robbed the home run. And the Roadrunners go on to win that ball game 2-1 to eliminate a team that was in Omaha. And at the time, that was the first ever postseason win for CSUB at the Division I level in an NCAA tournament. You know, volleyball had made it the season before in fall of 2014, but they lost in the first round. No one had ever won a game. And so that was the first ever Division I postseason victory for CSUB. Hayden Carter, 9 innings, 1 run, 7 hits, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts, 117 pitches. His swan song as a pitcher at CSUB. I defended him. I defended Coach Kernan publicly about making that call. The right call was made. Hayden Carter never pitched in a competitive game again. But guess what? He's a heck of a pitching coach these days, and probably a lot better because of moments like that. Because he wanted the ball when it was a chance to take the ball. And Coach Kernan reflects on what that mentality that Carter showed in that ball game.
He is a cool customer, man. But even Hayden Carter, if you watch the last at bat, there's 2 outs and there's nobody on. Joey made that play at third for the first out, which was, and thank God the umpire got that right. I mean, it was really close. And so there's 2 outs, and even Hayden Carter, he throws the first pitch and almost hits the guy. Then he throws the next pitch, and it's like really high. It's like you could tell he was like trying too hard. You know, he was even he, and so he goes behind the mound for like about 5 seconds, which my guys usually never do because I have them, work fast.
Right.
He stops everything. He goes behind the mound. He looks into center field. He turns around, takes this big, giant, deep breath, and just like pulls himself back in, and just throws the next one at the knees, and then the next one gets hit to left. And so, I mean, all the way up until the end, they just knew what to do.
I remember when the ball game was over, I took a picture of the box score. I put it on Twitter and the account. That just happened because the Roadrunners won a postseason game and eliminated Ole Miss. I mean, we weren't the first team out of the tournament, and they expected us to be because we were nobodies. And we just eliminated Ole Miss, a team that was in Omaha the year before, and they weren't leaving. They went 0-2 barbecue. I mean, that was impressive. What a day and a busy weekend. I drove back and forth in Bakersfield every day to UCLA, but to go there and get a victory and not be the first team out was special. It was really cool, and to buy T-shirts, with your logo on it next to UCLA and Ole Miss and Maryland. I mean, I still have the shirt framed right behind me here in the Costello recording compound in Tehachapi. It's part of my memorabilia because it was just cool to be in that situation with this program and this group of guys, and to be in a regional and make a little noise as well. It was pretty cool. It was about a ball game. But Hayden Carter proving the media wrong, who said he shouldn't be out there. His arm's going to hurt. That was his last competitive game ever. That's the difference between how you should play baseball from what the media tells you and how Bill Kernan coaches players to not just be ball players, but to be competitors, to be men. And that's a big difference. And every one of those guys right now, the ones that I'm still in contact with, I even still work with some of them. Some of them are business owners, and I work with them in my current job. They have that Bill Kernan mentality, and they'll admit to me on a regular basis, man, I heard Coach's voice today on something I was dealing, and it got me through it. So those moments like that, refusing to let somebody finish something you start, no one does that anymore. But that was a big part of the program, and that was a big part of that team in 2015 specifically. All right, we got to step away and take a break. We're going to wrap up this journey. The runner season comes to an end in the regionals, and we'll talk about that briefly, and then wrap up this edition of Roadrunner Classic, remembering the 2015 WAC baseball champion and NCAA regional baseball squad. Like I said, I feel like I could do another whole show just about baseball stories. It's been fun going down memory lane and chatting with Coach Kernan about all this stuff and remembering things that we kind of forgot, and then we go, oh yeah, that happened. Anyway, more to come as we wrap this version up. Hope you'd enjoyed it as much as I have putting it together, and hearing the voices again, seeing the faces. It's been a lot of fun. We'll be right back. This is Roadrunner Classic from Learfield IMG College.
it's interesting because you have these teams like the 91 team in Northridge I was telling you about that got together there and everything. The 2015 team from Bakersfield is going to be, those guys will be friends for life. They still contact me all the time. We still, stay in touch. They stay in touch with each other. Bad teams don't have reunions.
That they do not. Welcome back to Roadrunner Classic. Final segment of this 2-episode edition of what has been a fun trip down memory lane for the 2015 Western Athletic Conference Baseball Champion CSUB Roadrunners. I'm Corey Costello. I was blessed to be a part of that team as much as I can say I was part of the team. I mean, I wasn't training and I wasn't working out and putting in the blood like those guys were. I had a different sort of dedication to it, but he's right. There, even me to this day, there's some of those kids in that team that I'm still, I call them kids. Like, they're not kids now, they're grown adults. They're grown men with families, right? But I'm still in touch with them and their parents too. The group of parents on this team, we touched on it briefly, but the parents on this team, the Metzger family, the Hine family, the Barragans, just an absolute pleasure to be around those families. And I'd have them, they would feel like they knew me because the kids, especially like the Hine family, the Grotjohn family, the people that were from out of the area, they couldn't come to every home game in Bakersfield, so they'd listen on the internet, and they'd come, when they did make it to Bakersfield, they'd make it a point to seek me out and say, hey, we just want to tell you what a great job. Thank you so much. We know you're giving up a lot of time, to be here on the weekends, and that kind of stuff. Thank you so much for being here, and doing this. I think even that year in 2015, I think it might have been 2015, my wife and I had an anniversary. We had a home game. So she ended up throwing out the first pitch as part of our anniversary because that was just part of life for us at the time, We're different people now, but priorities kind of changed. But it was a great group of parents and kids as well. And, they lost the next day to UCLA. The next evening to UCLA wasn't the way they wanted to go out, but pretty close ball game. UCLA broke it open late, hit a laser beam kind of knuckleball looking line drive, went off the glove of Miles Jones. They called it an error. It was an impossible ball to catch just based on the trajectory of it, and they broke the game open a little bit, and they ended up getting the win, and that ended the Roadrunners season. But obviously getting a win in the regionals and making it was a huge deal. And, they walked away with their heads high. Everybody did. Coach Kernan did. He left really the game for a few years. He returned last year as an assistant coach at Sacramento State, but only for a year. He's now out of college baseball once again. But, they might have lost 9-1 at the end of the game. But I'll tell you, James Barragan kind of wrapped up that season and that his career and just the mentality because he'd been around so long. He took a line drive off the chest in his last inning, last play as a Roadrunner, and literally wore this ball off the chest, picked it up, throws it to first for the out, sort of pumps his fists and yells, and then people are cheering and he walks off and he tips his hat and he walked off, and that was it. And I thought, man, how fitting for that man's career, and to really talk about how tough this program is, with James Barragan, to end it like that was it was pretty cool to see. And it's really a special group, as Coach Kernan pointed out. And I want to share with you something at the end. Coach Kernan's not the most active guy on social media, but he posted something almost 2 years ago now. And he runs every day in Central Park from his place on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, and he talks about how he runs every day at Central Park. But he pointed out that he bought a park bench at Central Park, and he put a plaque on that bench, and he dedicated it to all his players. And it says, William Kernan, number 17, to those who trained with me in survival mode, we did what nobody else had ever done or ever will again. And that sits at Central Park in New York City. And that will be there forever in perpetuity. And, maybe one day I'll go. I went up there to visit Coach Kernan in New York once, but this next time around, it was before that bench was there, so I'll make sure I go seek out that bench. Thank you all so much for enjoying. I hope you've enjoyed Roadrunner Classic. Certainly have had a lot of time to put this together and reminisce on a really fun team to be around back in 2015. We hope we get sports back soon, and we can make new memories. But in the meantime, this is what we're dealing with, and I hope you're having fun remembering the good times and the championship moments on Roadrunner Classic. Next time on Roadrunner Classic, we look into the 2017 regular season WAC champion CSUB basketball team and their improbable run in the NIT, being the first team ever to go from the 16 seed to the spot at Madison Square Garden. We will talk about that on the next couple editions of Roadrunner Classic from Learfield and IMG College. Hey, thanks so much once again, the folks at Learfield IMG College, for this opportunity, as well as our friends at American General Media for putting together this program, and I hope you've enjoyed it as well, as we come to you each week from the Costello Recording Compound here in Tehachapi, California, and I certainly wish that all of you are well, that you'll stay healthy, and that I hope that we'll be back soon at ball games and stadiums together to not only remember sports, remember baseball, but to create new memories and new things to talk about down the road. We talk about some of the greatest teams ever, and we'll be creating new great teams very, very soon. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll catch you next time. I'm Corey Costello. So long. This is Roadrunner Classic from Learfield IMG College.
This has been Roadrunner Classic, presented by Dignity Health, Hello Human Kindness, Stockdale Podiatry Group, We Treat Your Feet, Knights Jewelers, if you don't know jewelry, know your jeweler, Barbich, Hooper, King, Dill, Hoffman, providing peace of mind in an increasingly complex world, and by the Birchtold Equipment Company, Bakersfield's leading equipment company. The preceding has been a Learfield IMG College presentation.